before, you can join the meeting, and we'd love to see you, because today we're going to be celebrating Mother's Day in advance. Sunday is Mother's Day, and we are going to give you a chance to maybe tell some stories about your mom and her influence on your faith, or another impactful woman in your life that you might want to talk about, or maybe what it's like for you if you're a mom, or if you are in a nurturing role with kids. Doesn't have to be biological kids. Maybe how you help shape them spiritually, or some of the things that you do that have been meaningful, particularly in this time of sheltering in God's presence, sheltering in place that we've been going through. So, and we know that this is going to be a little different Mother's Day for many of us. We may not physically be able to be with moms or women that are important to us. So we wanted to spend some extra time giving all of us a chance to interact a little bit, and to be able to share in a meaningful way about that. So I see a few folks are jumping in on Facebook Live. Welcome, Deborah Fields and Marie Bonnie and Michelle. So welcome. And if you want to jump in to be in the room with us, we invite you to do that. You can just go to zoom.us, or you can use the link, and you can come in that way. But the room ID is 682-247-5404. So, hi, Kimberly. Hi, Morgan. I see you on Facebook. Good to have you with us. Good to be together. Kimberly, I just unmuted you because the meeting may be set up funky. So see if you can remute yourself, and I just want to make sure you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I just
where is everyone? I may have to leave again.
Oh, no, don't leave. We are just getting started. So
is the link in the Facebook there?
Yes, I put it in the post.
In the comments.
Yeah. And the number, if people can just go to zoom.us, and it's 682-247-5404. So
yeah, I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying it to people that may be on Facebook.
Yeah, I was trying to give it to Darlene. Say it again.
It is 682-247-5404. And it's actually the same number every time. But doesn't seem to be an easy way to, keep it like as a favorite. I mean, because I have to look it up all the time myself. So
I don't see the link in the comments. I'm just looking.
Oh, I didn't put it when we just started, but when I posted the reminder with the image, I put the link.
We're behind anyways.
Yeah.
You talk, I'm looking. I just want to try to get comments, because it looked like a couple people were asking.
Yeah. So, I hope you guys come in. It's always fun. And
yes, please.
Yes, Kimberly doesn't want to be alone with Pastor Chip and I.
It's the
scary.
It's a scary. It's
not
a scary.
So, so Kimberly, I know you wanted to deliver some signs. Have you done that yet, or are you going to do it later?
Gonna do it.
Okay.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, I'm gonna do it this afternoon since I have a second driver. I was waiting for her schedule.
Right. That's yeah. I have the only one in Lakewood, I'm pretty sure. So
although I was looking at that little church you posted that was for sale.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had a lot of ideas about that.
Oh yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Garfield, Lakewood.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I'm just putting the number here in the comments for Facebook if people want to jump in.
Put the link there in a minute.
So yeah, if you're tuning in, Kimberly's referring to, I was on a walked the other day and I saw a little church that was for sale here in Lakewood, where I live here on the west side. And it's just a sad thing, but we know a lot of churches are going that way, and that this current crisis is
This just sped it.
accelerating it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It just sped it up.
Yep. So while we're waiting to see who else might pop in, okay, here's Sherry.
Yay, Sherry.
So Kimberly, what were your ideas for the church for sale?
Oh, Garfield Lakewood, of course.
Sherry, I just, hold on. Sherry, I just unmuted you. The settings might be weird, like where I might have to do that. So if you mute yourself and you can't get back on, I can unmute you. So just like wave a hand or something like that.
All right. I will.
All right.
Terry, can you look in the comments right now? Is that the link I put? Is that the right link? Because I clicked it and it doesn't seem to go there.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not. It should work. I mean, that's the right URL. But if they go to zoom.us and put in that number that I put in the comments, they can come right in.
Okay.
So I think let's start. It's good to see everybody. And see what happens. So it's good to be together. Another Faith on Fridays, looking towards Mother's Day. So we're going to share some thoughts and stories maybe about moms or other influential women that have influenced our faith, and or maybe how we have nurtured others' faith, whether biological children or children that we've led in other ways or connected with in other ways. So Chip, do you want to start with some of grounding us in scripture a little bit?
Yeah, we can do that. We years and years ago, on a Mother's Day, I remember preaching a message entitled, "Is it okay to call God Mom?" Which of course I said it was. There are several scriptures I referred to that day. Let me see if I can share my screen. But there's so many rich scriptures like these. You know, the male-dominated language, obviously, we've always had, referring to God, and in the context of, we know whoever God is, he's more than just a father or a mother. But it was a powerful image of relating to a parent and a child. I think in that society, obviously, men had the power. It was a very patriarchal society. So it was a very powerful image to have God as a father. And I've broken that down many times. When Jesus describes some of the actions of God as a father, for example, in the parable of the prodigal son, it's a very unusual father. No fathers would run. That's what children did. No father would disgrace themselves and run out to the end of the city to receive a son back who had disrespected him, or leave a feast to go and respect an older son with an attitude. So even though it's an image of a Jewish father, it's a very, very rich image. And there's even maternal aspects, I think, in how God is depicted by Christ as a father. But some of these are just some of the more famous ones. When Jesus wept over the city of Jerusalem. I may put a picture up of that place where Terry and I have been there as you come down from the Mount of Olives and you look over Jerusalem, and to just see Jesus weeping over the city at those spots is incredible, to be in that location. But one of his cries was, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I've longed to gather you together as a mother hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing." I love Hosea. And the prophets, basically, I don't know who this is. Oh, it looks like Darlene here. That the Hosea, the prophets are always, speaking God's anguish, speaking God's pain. I love Rabbi Abraham Heschel, who wrote some commentaries on the prophets and said that the prophets are always known as these harsh, thus saith the Lord, but they also give us God's heart. He called it the pathos of God. And these first 11 verses of Hosea, I just have 4 up here, are some of my favorite in all the prophecies. But you when you read this, you hear God speaking as a very, very maternal voice. It just is really clear. When Israel was a child, I loved him. Out of Egypt, I called my son. But the more they were called, the more they went away from me. How many of us as parents know that feeling? It was I who taught Ephraim, and Ephraim was just another name for Israel. It was the northern kingdom. It was I who taught them to walk, taking them by their arms, right? I remember doing that with my kids. You hold them up on the arms like this. But they did not realize it was I who healed them. And here's where it gets really passionate. I led them with cords of human kindness. What I have in yellow there, the cords of human kindness, that's the same word in the Hebrew for umbilical cords. Mm. So imagine reading that. I led my children with umbilical cords, with ties of love. To them, I was like one who lifts a little child to the cheek, right? That was a very maternal image, not something a Jewish father would do. I bent down to feed them. He will not let your foot be moved. Oh, no, sorry, that is actually from a psalm, so ignore that one. I merged it. But there's those images there in Hosea. Trying to get down one more. There we are. Psalm 131:2. I love this one. The psalmist is crying out to God, and he says, I've calmed and quieted myself. I'm like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I'm now content. So a lot of images, and there's many more. There's images in Deuteronomy where God is a mother eagle. There's images in Isaiah. So I think the powerful image is the image of a parent and a child. For some people, the image of father doesn't work. Maybe father wasn't in the picture, maybe abusive father. For some people, the image of mother doesn't work. Maybe bad relationship with mother, maybe. But I think for us to sense this, very, very holy parent, father that does not abuse his children, a mother who does not abandon her children. That's powerful, probably the most powerful image in the Bible, I think, for God. There are many images. God is king, God is shepherd, the fullness. But I think the parent-child imagery and the bridegroom, which we're the bride, and men have to get over that, are probably the 2 strongest images, I think, in personal images. Obviously on the cross with Jesus and parent and child. So yeah, that's a little run through of some of the biblical imagery showing the maternal nature of God. And I think Mother's Day is a great time to remember that.
Yeah. And just curious, is it surprising to any of you, whether, Sherry and Kimberly in here or anybody online watching, to hear, God depicted in such a way? I mean, does that kind of strike anything, or maybe you kind of always thought that was how maybe you thought of God? Because I know it was when I first, it's been a little bit, but it kind of surprised me. I didn't know. I had only heard the male image, and, the older translations also don't tend to be very gender neutral. So it was kind of liberating to me. So
Definitely say that for myself. I've always considered God obviously as father, and it took me a while in my relationship growing to actually call him daddy. And I still typically do that privately. Whenever I've done it a couple of times, even at Garfield, when I was reading scripture, I've said daddy, and I always feel like people are looking at me like, what is she talking about? Not her father. We're talking about God. So I've always felt comfort with saying daddy, but actually today you just brought joy to my heart, because I never thought of him as mom. And when I think about my mom and my dad and those relationships, that just brought joy to my heart. So thank you.
That's good. And it's been so long since I preached that. I almost feel like people are used to it with me now because I refer to those aspects. I guess it was, kind of controversial at one time. I think less so now. I mean, the male image of God as Father is going to live because it's so pertinent. And I think your image of Daddy, Kimberly, is spot on because that's what Jesus called him when he called him Abba. It wasn't Father, more like Papa. But I think it's just been helpful for me to know the many times in Scripture that God was referred to for the maternal nature of God, because there's sometimes, just like the psalmist in 132, it's just sometimes I need to climb up into her lap and feel that nurture that I felt from my mom, or the comfort of a very compassionate, gentle father. So yeah, it's been helpful. They're not preached on a lot. I think we always have different controversies. That one we kind of moved on from to another one, and we'll have another one 20 years from now. But so it's just a helpful sense. Like you, Kimberly, I feel that warmth going into Mother's Day, reading some of those scriptures.
Hey, Colleen, welcome.
Hi.
Hey.
And I just had some folk jump in online. So Alex is in, Billy some jumped in. Good to see you as one of my mentors. And I'm trying to read your last name, and it looks like Joe. She has actually wondered if we were recording this because they're studying the prophets, and she wants everything I said for their group. So we're not recording, but I sent my email. Email me. I'll be glad to give you kind of a little synopsis of that.
And actually, it is being recorded on Facebook and YouTube.
Oh, all right, Ann, did you hear
So
that?
it can be seen on demand later.
That's right. After this is over, you can go to our Facebook page. Thank you, Terry. And it's all will be on demand, so you can pull that off. Good catch. That's why she's executive pastor.
So I'd love to hear some stories from folks about your moms or women. And I shared in my e-note this week that about my mom, and she was Sunday school teacher in our little Lutheran church I grew up in, and but I remember seeing her with her Bible. She read the Bible every day. She didn't talk about it much, but she made a little velvet cover for it and embroidered in gold Holy Bible. And I, as I've shared before, I was away from faith for a really long time, and when I was just coming back into faith, I found it up in my attic, and it's been very meaningful. There's still some notes in there from classes she took, and some bulletins and things like that. So
Where are you going?
it's a great for me, like a window and to be able to touch something tangibly
What's that?
that I know my mom found very precious. So it was in retrospect, I didn't appreciate it at the time, and she died when I was pretty young, so we never really had a chance to talk about faith. The other thing I remember is she would sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, very loudly when she was cooking, and her voice was horrible. I inherited that from her, the inability to sing, but that has become a very fond memory because she belted it out, and also a mighty fortress as a good Lutheran. So anyhow, so others share, and if you want to jump in on Facebook, you can do that.
I would think kind of from the aspect of how our moms shaped us in the faith, really, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of your formation. I'll just say my piece and then get out of the way. But I mean, I think everybody knows how close I was with my mom, and landing at Garfield the last Sunday of September, and then having her pass away Christmas Eve, just really 4 months later, with her birthday on Christmas Day. And so my kind of welcome to Garfield was preaching 3 Christmas Eve sermons after my mom passed. So it was really, really emotional. And to get emotional now. I'll be back.
Someone else jump in while Chip collects himself, and I'll never forget. I mean, that was very early on and being in ministry with Chip. those are some moments I'll never forget myself,
Yeah.
obviously in a different way.
I caught my breath. It was emotional night because I was thinking of Matthew singing in the Christmas pageant that night, and everybody in our whole family was just like, this is where grandma would want us to be. Like no way we wouldn't be in church on Christmas Eve. So yeah, there's a place in Timothy I love where Timothy's kind of having a little crack in his armor. And Paul writes to him and says, look, I know your faith. I saw it in your grandmother. I saw it in your mother, and I know it's in you. And that one kind of slays me because, my mom, my grandma, I'll throw some pictures up maybe later. But my grandma, I've shared the story. She was a single mom. My grandfather, kind of timely story, went to prison holding up a grocery store to try to get bread for his family during the Depression. And tragic accident happened, and he and another man went to prison. And my grandma divorced him, but it was that old God-fearing Germans, once married, always married, put the Bible on her wedding ring next to her bed, and became a strong single mom in the 1920s when there was no badge of honor. Managed the Youngstown Country Club, the management of it, and was choir director in Canfield Methodist Church for 38 years. And everybody called her a tough old bird, but she really programmed me in the faith. And then for my mom to be the product of that and the strong woman that she was, and raising me in the faith, when you're young, you don't want to go to Sunday school, be honest. I love how our kids want to come. I was taken, dragging and screaming, drugged me into cherub choir and all those things that tormented me. But it was something about my mom that I just knew God was a really big deal. Because, she would, when they sang the hymns, she sang. And so did my dad, which was good because a lot of men just stand there and kind of kick rock. But she sang with her heart. And man, when the sermon came, she was locked in. And almost every memory of me being a child when I was sitting with her before we could sneak up to the balcony as teenagers, man, she just cried through every sermon. There were just tears every sermon. She locked in. And I'm looking at her like, this has got to be a really, really big deal. And that's what was implanted in my life. Every step along the way would try to have me make a faith interpretation of my life. My first dog died, and that's traumatic when you're a kid. What's God saying to you about this right now? Well, how should we be praying about this? When I go through trying to get a basketball scholarship to play basketball and wanting to make this team, well, how's God shaping you? How is God helping you in this? What's being formed? It was just, Terry, when you asked the God moment questions, I live God moments every day. She would interpret my report cards, not preachy, but it's okay. If you're struggling with this, how are you praying about that? How can God help you with this? And what verses in the Bible might help you with it? It's like, I was just shepherded that way. So that's a lot, but that's my wonderful memories.
I never made the connection before, but when talking about how your mom reacted to preaching, maybe that's not entirely surprising that you became a preacher. So anyhow, but I'd love to hear others of you also, whatever stories you'd be willing to share.
Oops, I turned my mic.
I did. Oh, does somebody else want to go?
You go next.
Okay, me? Okay.
You, Sherry.
Chip, I was there that Christmas and I couldn't believe, I was like dumbfounded. I said, why is he here? And then getting to know you after that, realizing how important it was. But that was unbelievable. It made a big impression on me. Couldn't understand it that weekend or that Christmas, but later on, it started sinking in. My mom cried in church. I only caught her once. It was after Dad died, and I don't know, it's probably several years after. I think I was in college, home for a weekend, and I had a different reaction. I looked at her and go, "Why are you crying?" And I had no idea how important this was to her. Boy, this is really bringing up stuff. So that made me remember that memory. But when I took away from my mom and my sister was there, going through adversity, how they got through adversity. And when my dad died, when my mom and dad were about 40, early 40s, I think. And she, she just trooped us through that. My brothers have said, well, in the beginning, one of her friends came and stayed so that she could handle things. And my younger brother and sister were sent away for the summer to stay with some relatives. And my brother would say recently to me that he asked her once, how did she get through it? She says, I just did what I had to do for your kids during the day. And at night, I would just go to my room and cry. She just, but her adversity getting through that was just, I don't think I took it in at the moment being a teenager in those years, but later on, seeing how she got through that with staying in church and being active and being in her sorority. And then my sister, she's a mom of 4. And in 2011, they lost their 18-year-old, their youngest, in a terrific car accident. Their faith, her and her husband, their faith have been so big. And just, they've grown closer. And there were 4 boys who died in an accident. And I think 2 of them have divorced. But 2 couples, my sister and her brother, her husband, and another couple have been going on strong. So their faith really got them through that. And, gives me encouragement for when, if I have to go through any other adversity in my life, besides losing my dad, I've got examples. And those are good moms. Thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Isn't it amazing how when we talk about it, it stirs up everything so fresh. Kimberly, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, if you know, they say that Bermuda has more churches per square mile than any other country. Don't know if that's still true, but so growing up and thinking about all my grandmother, my great aunts, everyone there, they were just constant examples of faith. And one of my favorite memories, my grandmother went to St. John's Anglican Church. It was the first multi-ethnic church I'd ever attended. I didn't realize that because I was so used to it that it was recently when I was home, I was like, wait a minute, this has always been the case. My grandfather, on the other hand, went to St. Paul AME Church in Bermuda. But one of my best memories is my grandmother used to embroider, and she would embroider the altar cloths. And I would see this little woman go up to the altar and pray and lay out the cloths, and just the pride that she had, knowing and feeling like she was serving Jesus and teaching us how to serve. And then that same pride of taking me over to St. Paul and seeing where my great grandfather had built the church and all the family plaques that were in there. And she was the beginning here, and that God was in everything, that God made everything, and he was protecting me in the blankets as I slept, and no harm would come to me. And to this day, I won't say how many decades later, that still brings me comfort. And I try to pass that on to my girls because there's some pretty, even yesterday, we had some pretty tough conversations, but I kept calling on my mom to give me that wisdom and how to talk to my children the way that she talked to us. And then Sherry, kind of with you, I watched my mom bury her 2 sons. And I don't know where she got, at different times, 20 years apart, where she got that strength. And she held me up, and she held my dad up with that same faith that God has them, and he's gonna take care of us, those that are left. And so now as I stand as the last one remaining of the 5, I feel I got my mom's presence just holding me up.
Yeah, it reminds me, Kimberly, when Maya Angelou talks, she's now talking to God directly, but when she used to be such a conduit for the Holy Spirit, I'll never forget her on this massive stage. I forget where she was, but she was complaining because it was really, really crowded up there. And nobody could really understand what she's talking about. She's all by herself on this big stage. She said, well, every time I come to speak, I'm surrounded by my ancestors. I'm surrounded by my mom and my brothers. And she just starts listing it. And she goes, looks around this, she goes, boy, is it crowded up here. And I think, in your conversations yesterday was crowded. I felt that many, many times, whether preaching or whether parenting or when you feel their presence. I tell you what, I really get emotional every year is All Saints Day. I
Mm.
really get emotional at that thing at Heritage when we sing for all the saints. And I swear there's been once or twice that I've heard my mom and sister in that chorus. Like I've heard them, and it just reminds you.
Darlene, would you be willing to share some?
Well, you guys are so emotional, and I've been emotional all week, so just bear with me.
I just can't imagine
Um,
people watching going, when did Garfield turn into The View? And
Yeah.
we're all here just crying now.
Everybody's crying. But my mom was the daughter of a Methodist minister. So her grandfather was a Methodist minister in South Carolina. And so with us 9 kids, there were 9 of us, and she was very strict. She started out with, telling us about her childhood, where she couldn't play cards on Sunday and she couldn't wear makeup, and she couldn't until she was of a certain age. And so some of those rules came over to us. But one thing she taught us at a young age was how to pray. And every night we were taught, now I lay me down to sleep. We taught that prayer. And then as we grew older, there were other prayers, but she always made sure we said our prayers at night, and that we said our prayers before we ate, giving thanks. And she was just, one thing that she instilled in us, which is still a part of me today, is you have to love everybody. She taught us, she said, regardless, everybody needs love, and you just have to show them that love. And where we grew up, and even though there were 9 of us and we didn't have a lot of food, or we didn't know that until we grew older, the little things that we did have, but she would feed the neighborhood. She would feed, other kids would come. She made homemade biscuits and pancakes, everything from scratch. And the kids would line up at our door. I don't know if they could smell it or what, but she made sure everybody had food to eat. And it's still part of my DNA in terms of who I am, because of who she was. She sang in the choir later she switched over from Methodist to Baptist, and she would sing in a choir. And I remember one Sunday at church when she was singing, and all of a sudden she caught what I guess they call the Holy Ghost, and it was kind of scary because she threw her hands up and she stood up and she's just crying, and it was just like, what's wrong with my mom? We were all concerned. But later on, she was fine. She said, I'm fine. I caught the spirit. So it was just, even when she retired and got cancer, she would always say that she worked at the VA hospital. She was LPN, and she would always say, I'm going to get cancer, because she was around radiation all the time. Well, she did. She got brain cancer, and she lived. The kids didn't want her to have the surgery, but my dad said, I'm the one who's going to be taking care of her. And so she had the surgery, but after that, she lost her speech and she lost her mobility, but she would still smile, and she was always, we had our days to be with her, and we all thought that we were special, but I was really special. She was my best friend and my confidant. And a lot of times they told, I didn't feel like I was a child. I was an adult, because I heard adult stories from her as a child. And so she happened to pass on my watch, and it was just, just me and her. And I could see the look in her eyes, and, but it was just happened. It just so happened that way. And it was really hard to take. But but she just gave me a look which said it's okay. And what's weird, and I think I shared the story in one of, I don't know, in one of the groups, whereas I just felt her presence. I would be driving along and I'd see something in the passenger side, and it was like a shadow, and I'd feel this comfort, and I just knew that, you know, she was telling me she was okay. So happy Mother's Day, right? Anyway,
It is.
that's it. Whose idea was this anyway?
Yeah, it's Terry. That's why I'm staying quiet and unmute and figure out where we go from here.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think about all the mothers. You were talking about the ancestors, and obviously, well, between movies or documentaries or whatever, or just the old songs, those old Negro spirituals. And I see the old, you know, Black women with their hair tied up, kind of like mine, and doing whatever chore they had. And this goes back, you know, to slave times, and singing those Negro spirituals and just believing and just knowing. And I think, and I don't think, I know that's where so much faith comes from in our communities, knowing that despite all the difficulties, God's going to carry us through. And that goes back to those ancestors that Maya Angelou talks about. And still, I still feel them on my shoulders, and that I have to carry them on and teach my girls, particularly having girls, about the strength and the power and the love and the faith and what it means to be a woman, a spiritual Christian woman, a woman in relationship. And I'm already smiling as my girls talk about, more Jordan, what it's going to be like to be a mom, and what she's going to do with her kids in church, and how she's only going to marry a Christian, and she's going to do all these things. And, you know, I just pray, period. But it makes my heart smile because I see my mom, I hear my mom and my girls. So the legacies are strong.
Well, that's why last week, you know, I opened up the message with talking about the slave spirituals, you know, because, and the particular one I broke down, I've got shoes, but because that's again an example of what fighting religion. I mean, the religion that there's peace, but there's struggle. There's peace, but there's struggle. And the spirituals were absolute manifestations of that. That's why it was interesting. It just fit the series, and you brought that back to my head from last week. All right, Terry, unmute.
So I'm really struck by, you know, your moms and my mom probably, I mean, there was some intentionality, you know, some teaching that, you know, love everybody, and that, you know, there's one God, and that, but there's also, you know, probably things that your moms did unconsciously. They just kind of did them. And so it makes me think that we have such an opportunity to have impact that we don't even realize. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, someday, or if not even already, you know, you guys I know are all moms, you know, they're going to be telling stories about you because you've been planting seeds, and you continue to do that with people that you encounter, not just children, biological children. But I think, and I love the idea of the, you know, the ancestors and everybody kind of on our shoulders or with us, and that we're, and reminded again what people like me learn, you know, many know already, but it helps us realize that we really need to be in a collective mindset, right? In multi-ethnic conversations, you know, the typical, you know, white Western point worldview, American worldview is individualism. But this is a reminder to me that it's community, and the stories and the songs and all those things help to form us and shape us and bind us together. And I was thinking of Julian of Norwich, I don't know if anybody knows who she is. Chip does, but she was a nun and a great mystic in the Middle Ages during the plague, one of the plagues. And she had visions that she wrote down, and it was unusual for women to do that then. But she had one vision where she saw the world as I think it was a hazelnut, just a small nut, and heard God say, all shall be well and everything shall be well. And that sense of comfort and peace, and, brings me kind of back to the Psalm that, nestling in God's arms in the midst of, right, all the situations and circumstances that may try to take away our peace, but that there's that sense of comfort, and that all shall be well. It may not be well right now. Well, it certainly is not well right now, on many fronts. But that there's that sense of comfort and nurture and presence. So I guess that's something I want to hang on to for Mother's Day this year. And so any last thoughts on maybe some things that you've been or want to be more intentional about in terms of instilling maybe some of what you've received from your moms and pass that on? Just anything else kind of stirred up?
Yeah, I really do want to be more intentional. And I don't think about it until sometimes it happens. And then God gives me some encouragement, I think, to, pass on encouragement to one of my kids. So yeah, thanks for that intentionality. I think that's going to be a good word for me to take, going forward.
Anyone else?
How to articulate it. But pretty much what Sherry said, just passing on to my girls. I tell them that they are super women. And I know people get mad when I say that, but that's something my mom instilled in me, because there's going to be a lot of things that will knock them down. And I want them to know, and I want to be more intentional about teaching them that they are super women because they have the power of God on their side. And just to keep believing that if they keep the faith and they keep holding on, that all is going to be all right. And that we may not always have things go our way, but they're God's way if we keep believing. I think I do it, but I just need to keep sharing with them. And then just keep sharing. I had the benefit of having so many women around me, whether they were relatives or my mom's friends. She was really involved in a lot of different organizations. And I need to be more intentional about with my girls, particularly since we moved back to Ohio and we don't have the same type of relationships, but them knowing how many women are out there and to find that power kind of in the sisterhood of other Christian women and that strength with other women.
I just keep
Well, Tom,
go ahead.
Tom and I have a challenge with my bonus kids, his two kids. They're millennial kids. And we talk to them about spiritual things and going to church and that, well, they have a different viewpoint of the world. And they don't think that, Jessica will say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And so it allows us to get into conversation with them about what does that mean when you say that. They have come to Garfield with us, especially, during when Tom is singing, they'll come and Corey will come. He has come he likes the Mosaic service. And he says the music is really good, So, we're slowly trying to talk to them about church and God, and they say they believe in those spiritual things, but they don't believe that there's a person who does it. So we just say we had Jessica got a job recently, and she was saying how what had happened, how the interviewer chose her, that something had happened and her name popped up and he told her about it. And I said, sounds like a God thing to me. And she was like, okay, whatever. So it's a challenge, but we're constantly in conversation, and they do pray at meals. That's something we do at our house when they sit down at the table. So it's a process. They're a work in process. So
Well,
but
we,
it's,
we all are work in process.
yeah, exactly.
But I appreciate you, being in that, because first off, there's nothing unusual about them. 75% of America says they're spiritual, not religious.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in the majority. I'm starting to feel more and more in the minority. But I do think also, unashamedly, as you and Tom share, what gives you fuel, what makes you guys work, how faith is at the center of that, because they do look up and admire you. And that, that living sermon is often so much more effective with that generation. And let's be honest in it, this is where I have tried to be in my own way, shape, or form for the 30 years that God pulled me out of the corporate arena into full-time vocational ministry, to be somewhat of a revivalist or a, reformist, because a lot of what we settled for and called church was so impotent, and it was so clubby, and it was so not church that we lost some generations.
Yeah.
Because they said, if that's what God is, if God's so boring that he can only put all middle-aged white people, there's 1,600 hymns, maybe he's not relevant for my life. And I'm not condemning traditions. I'm just saying we lost opportunities where I was talking to my mom, just everything was about God growing up, but also, out there rebounding and passing me when I'm working on free throws, and, wanting me to, was real involved in my life. It wasn't this stoic piece. So, and I really feel, that's why I feel so called to people like you're bringing up. They always have a special place in my heart. I went through that experience. I mean, when I left the church, gosh, at 19, I think it was 18, and swore I'd never go back. And, I stayed away for 7 years, and just was sure the church was racist, sexist, didn't care about the poor, stuffy. I just gave up on it. So everybody goes through those. Terry did as well. But I do think we need to, and here's where I get old fashioned. We need to be like Paul said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God unto salvation for Jew and Gentile, for all of us. If there's something in it that's so dramatically powerful. I can't reconcile the world right now apart from the gospel. I just can't. I'm in the older I get, man, I'm becoming so conservative. Mr. Malcolm Chip is all of a sudden becoming I don't know, Howard Thurman or somebody. I don't know. I'm going back to the old school.
Can I just say, though, that being I'm spiritual and not religious, truthfully, that's what my mom was saying. All those years when she took me from denomination to denomination to denomination, she was teaching me that very thing. So I guess it depends on, the millennials or whoever think of it differently.
Yeah.
I just have always thought of it as, even in my own life, the different churches I've gone to, for me, it's about God. It's about his spirit. It's about my relationship. It's not about the building I walk in.
Right.
So again, maybe they think of it differently than I do, but that is exactly what my mom was teaching me. That, yeah, we need the Gospels, we need the church, but it's not a church.
Right.
It's knowing the church body. And that's where it brought me so much love and strength, and just kept renewing my faith as I thought about her words. And I've gone to Garfield, or I went to Acts in LA or wherever. It's all about him.
Yeah, that's redemptive company. Okay, because I sit around here. I've always said, you guys have heard me preach enough that I don't believe Christianity is a religion. The world had enough of those. I didn't think Jesus came to start a new religion. And I think what their specific rejection is of what they've seen as religion, which maybe needs to be rejected in some way, shape, or form. under the auspices of how you said that. That was-
Well, it allows for interesting conversations. I'll just say that.
oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
A lot of my funnest conversations are with people that are non-church because
Yeah.
they make me better. We're always preaching into a mirror. It's not as fun.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up, but thanks for coming in and sharing what you shared. And I've seen some folks popped in at Facebook here near the end. We'll be back at 5. We'll do something similar. We'll invite you to share stories about moms or other influential women in your life. And so we hope to see you then. But may God bless and keep you and make his face shine on you and give you his peace and carry those messages back out to future generations, right? I have such a sense of the depth and the width of the body of Christ and the impact that, generations can have on generations. And I think we've lost that so much in our culture and, devaluing other generations. And it's been a great reminder to hear, just even these few stories today. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you back at 5.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you for joining us.
challenge all my brothers out there. Don't be intimidated to jump in the room.
That is true too.
All right.
That's right. Guys have moms too.
Amen.
Yeah.
See ya.
Remember, hope for all.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Not
It's
for some.
snowing.
Oh no.
Snowing. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Oops.
Hey, guys.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.